Yeah, you, the hairy person watching or listening to this. I'm Greg Miller, and I want to shave you at a reasonable price. So let me tell you about our sponsor, Dollar Shave Club. Seriously, it's easier than hitting the skip button. Tim uses Dollar Shave Club, and Gia loves it, especially when he uses the razor with that Dr. Carver's shave butter. Dollar Shave Club makes products for your face, your hair, your skin, your shower, everything you need, and it's all their own original stuff. They only use the finest premium ingredients, and they deliver it to your door just like they do their razors. That means no more annoying trips to the store, cruising up and down the aisles, looking at shelf upon shelf, saying, what the hell do I do with this? I want you to love Dollar Shave Club as much as Tim and Gia do. So, I've arranged for you to try the first month of the best razor ever, along with travel-size versions of shave butter, body cleanser, and yes, even the butt wipes, for just $5. After that, replacement cartridges ship for just a few bucks a month. It's the DSC starter set. Get yours for just $5 exclusively at dollarshaveclub.com/Greggy. That's dollarshaveclub.com/Greggy.
Yeah, so my topic that I wanted to bring to the table was the importance of continuity within shared universes, and that considers the Marvel movies, which are up to 20 movies with Infinity War coming. With Infinity War,
you're right.
yeah.
With the work.
There will be 22.
19?
They said 22. We read a news story saying there will have been 22 of them by Avengers 4.
By Avengers 4,
which is Infinity War Part 2, right?
Fair.
and then so you have a limited continuity there. Then you have stuff like the comic books, which Greg and I have different feelings on with those, and how should they ever have reset points? Should they have new starting points? Things like that. And then like wrestling is one of the hardest ones, because it's not just the WWE story. It's if you're a wrestling fan and you go to the hardest degree of that, you could go back to the carnivals in the 1920s, and it's like, where do you start? Where do you end? How much does knowing that continuity of everything matter? So that's what I wanted to bring to the table today.
I think continuity is super important when it's good. When it's not good, who cares, right? And I think a perfect example of, obviously, I don't want to Marvel versus DC, whatever. But I think that what Marvel has been able to do with the last 20 some odd movies and now going into Infinity War is unbelievably cool storytelling. And I think that, yes, continuity is amazing when utilized correctly, because it totally builds off of itself and makes this really, really deep mythology like you guys are talking about that I think gives you a lot to glom onto. I think that DC is I think probably holding a little bit too closely to the continuity, as is the Fox universe. The one thing I can't stand in Fox is that they're trying to, they literally retcon the entire thing with Days of Future Past. And I'm like, I mean, I guess that people are super into X-Men, but did we really care? Can we just reboot that franchise already? Once Hugh Jackman's gone, what is the touchstone to the X-Men franchise? James McAvoy? Granted, Fassbender, from your mouth to God's ears. But do we really care? Can we just do another X-Men now? I would love to see them. I would love to see this 21st Century Fox sale go through, and then have them just completely reboot the X-Men universe and just fuck all the continuity of that universe. Who cares? Right?
But see, even that speaks to what you're talking about, and I think is a great parallel to comic books in the way that good continuity matters, good storylines matter, right? It was awesome in Days of Future Past to reboot it and then have Logan walk into the mansion, and we saw all the Bryan Singer X-Men that we loved so much before X-Men 3, and we were like, yes, all right, cool. Did it reset it? Did it not? You know what I mean? Whatever the fuck you want it to be, but they were there.
Marsden, you're like, oh, sorry, James Marsden.
That was awesome. That was so fucking cool.
He
graduated all right. No, of course not. But I mean, it was cool to see it happen.
Right.
It was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was an awesome way to do it.
It was a fun moment. Sure.
I think that the X-Men movies, there's been half of them good, half of them bad, depending on how you want to talk about it. But at the end of the day, I think that franchise did do something special for continuity, because it does predate the Marvel movies.
Yep.
And I think that it did a good job of rebooting itself with First Class and then going into Days of Future Past. But to then make both of those continuities make sense together, it was the most comic book thing you could possibly do.
Sure.
And I think it did work, and it did make sense. And I think that they, because of the success Marvel had, they fucked it up after that. by going too hard into the continuity and where everything goes. And that's why we see something like Logan come, and I think Logan's a direct answer to that, where they're like, we understand this does fit in the continuity, but really it's its own thing.
Necessarily. And that's what I'm saying is I like continuity only so much as it serves the actual storytelling. I don't like it when the series becomes a slave to the continuity. And I'm mostly talking about bad continuity. And you brought up, my point earlier, which is, when it's good, who's to say what's good, what's bad, right? Like you are a prime example of you liked
bad stuff.
Batman v Superman and Justice League. You're like, you enjoyed those movies, right? And so like the continuity they're setting up in there, I don't think that, like I would look at that universe and go, okay, I haven't necessarily think that they haven't knocked it out of the park with any of these. In fact, some could argue that they haven't even won a game, but I think they could. Oh, Wonder Woman's a good point. Yeah, it was a good movie. I think they could move forward and still build off that continuity and still make good products. But should they? I don't know. That's the question. Or clearly you've got a Batman that doesn't want to be Batman anymore. Can we use this as a point to just be like, let's start over again?
Well, the interesting thing for me with DC especially is I grew up a Marvel kid. But some of my favorite movies, like I love the Nolan Batman trilogy.
1989 Batman.
And 1989 was phenomenal. It got a little weird after that. But some of my favorite DC stories are the ones that are out of continuity. Like the Elseworlds, like Red Sun.
Kingdom Come.
Landis's New
American
Frontier,
Alien.
like all that kind of stuff are actually some of my favorite ones. So it's not the characters that I have a problem with, because I wouldn't even give those a shot if I didn't have it.
Sure.
But there is something special for me when I'm reading something about Spider-Man, and like in a current issue, he reveals who he is to J. Jonah Jameson, which is a huge thing, but it's only huge because it dates back to the 60s.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So it could go either way for me.
Well, and that's the whole point. But I think comic books are a weird thing to compare the movies to, right?
Absolutely.
Because movies, you get a shot every 2-3 years to get this movie out, get it right.
A few hours.
Exactly. 2 hours. Let's make it sing or let's not. And so you're fucked either way. Whereas like continuity for comic books, continuity for DC Comics in particular right now, I was super excited for New 52 because first off, it was when DC, as crazy as this sounds, decided that they would go day and date digital, and I could get all my books day and date digital. And the fact that I like welcoming in new fans. Like I had loved post Crisis on Infinite Earths to New 52, right?
And for context, what was the year time frame of that? When was Crisis?
Oh, Crisis was what, early 80s, right? Mid.
So
I wasn't reading as I was a kid.
So you had a 20+ year time frame.
And you figure as a kid, I get involved with comics to a point that I get really, like Death and Return to Superman really like, boom, locks me into the universe. And then it is reading back issues. It is reading encyclopedias. It is reading going forward to know this universe and know these people and understand why I personally think Kyle Rayner's a cooler Green Lantern than Hal Jordan. But why it meant so much when Hal Jordan fucking shows back up and it's full on parallax and all this shit's happening. And like why Final Night I still have a soft spot for, even though it was a stupid storyline. But it's all these adventures I have with all these characters that build in my head and make this a giant thing, to the point that New 52 comes around and I'm like, all right, cool, go ahead and reboot it. Let's see what you got. I don't care. Let's get new people in. They reboot it and Superman isn't my Superman anymore, much like Man of Steel or the DC Cinematic Universe. And I'm like, okay, I'm not compelled to read these Superman books, which suck. Superboy, my favorite character, this Superboy is not Connor Kent. I don't want to deal with this at all. And so I'm picking, choosing, and reading different things in the universe. But then when they bring in Rebirth, or even before that, really, when they introduced that my Superman was still with Lois, they had a kid named Jonathan, or they were about to have a kid named Jonathan. The way they reincorporate that and bring it all back in matters in a way to me of the same way now. This weekend I just caught up on Action Comics, on Batman, and on Dark Knight. Or I'm sorry, Detective Comics. Detective Comics just reintroduced Tim Drake, brought him back from the dead. And it's also part of the Doomsday Clock, which is the Watchmen, crossover, which is Dr. Manhattan toying with the DC universe. Yeah, well, if you haven't read Doomsday Clock, I'm not going to spoil much of it or anything, I won't spoil any of it, but maybe the last panel. And then I'm giving you the overarching plot. Doomsday Clock, have you read it yet? Dude, it's awesome because you know what it is? Okay, so the idea here is that, again, going back to New 52, when they reboot that universe all over the place. When we're at IGN, it's the first time DC Comics is doing day-and-day digital. So what was that, 2006
or 7?
No.
Well,
yeah, we were at New Building IGN, so it would have been like 2012.
At least 11, yeah. Right.
Anyways, going all the way back to that, this has all been, that and Rebirth have all been influenced by Dr. Manhattan, we're assuming, but by Dr. Manhattan.
Got it.
That he's got bored in the Watchmen universe and popped over here because he's just a god at this point.
Yep.
And so Doomsday Clock is when they're finally answering these questions and explaining how this all happened, and really, because all the books have fucked around with it of like, Wally West coming back and being like, how do we forget about you? We lost 5 years. We did all this stuff. Somebody's messing with time. Superman knows that. Shit's been reblinked in his universe to make my Superman everyone's Superman. It's confusing. Doomsday Clock picks up, and I thought it was going to be, we pick up and it's more Batman, the Flash, the Button. They're trying to figure everything out. It's not. It is, hey, guess what? It's 1992 or 1994 in the Watchmen universe.
It's only a few years after the whole Ozymandias thing.
Everything that's happened since the end of the first Watchmen book, and you're tossed back into the action, and they start laying, and it's like 98% all a direct sequel to Watchmen. That's really fascinating.
Yeah,
like,
all but the last 4 pages.
And the last 4 pages are Clark Kent going to prom in the new 52 or whatever, Rebirth. In the current DC timeline, his parents die in a car accident. It's him, it turns out, having a nightmare about that happening, and him waking up screaming, and Lois in bed next to him, and he's flying, and she's like, Clark, wake up. She's like, what is going on? You're screaming so loud, you're rattling the room or whatever. He's like, I'm having a nightmare. I was having a nightmare, and it was so real, and I could see the accident, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, and he's like, when's the last time you had a nightmare? And he's like, I don't think ever. And that's the end of the issue. And it's, even that is Dr. Manhattan toying with what I love so much about my Superman, that the Kents didn't die there, and why it was a big deal when Jonathan does die in Brainiac. And like, there's like so many things there that are so fucking awesome. All this said, this is my argument all the time about the DC
I am
films.
So unbelievably lost about anything that you just talked
That's the
about.
problem with continuity.
I was like, I should go back and watch the Watchmen movie again.
The takeaway from that is that this one instance of continuity is actually a pretty cool payoff. Mm-hmm. So far, I'm like, oh, I was not interested in your yet another universe-defining event, but you've now given me issue 1 of Doomsday Clock that's trying to explain fucking 7 years of comics, and you're actually doing a pretty cool job of like, oh, I can't wait to see where this goes.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Go.
No, continuity is weird for me because I think they're besides what you were talking about earlier is the movie good? I think, or is the book good? That is really what matters the most.
Sure.
But
yep.
On the flip side of that, I am just such a huge fan of continuity that I feel like there's something about continuity where there is so much thought put into it that I really enjoy, and that's why things like Fast and Furious I am so into, because those movies are almost continuity first. And it's like they figure, how can we make all this match up? Cool.
Yes.
Go from there.
Except they went back and like retconned some stuff in Fast and Furious, which is completely ridiculous.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
That's the point, is the continuity of it. The point is, how can we make all this make sense in a stupid way?
Right, but to me, that's an example of
movies,
it being not so great, a use of continuity, which is that they didn't plan. Like, the thing is, all of my criticisms of continuity can be disproven with what Marvel's doing, but they're the only ones that are really doing it right.
Oh, I disagree so much.
There aren't any other
Fast
major.
and Furious has better continuity than Marvel, I think. In the way of how it treats the stuff. And I think Marvel
For Christ's sake, they brought Letty back from the dead.
Yeah. So, but that's the point.
Well, they have not had to retcon anything in the Marvel cinematic, with the exception of Spider-Man being the kid from Iron Man 2.
And
other than that,
the Thanos glove, there has been stuff, and with this whole 8-year ahead stuff. The problem is, when you're 17 movies deep into a thing, there's going to be these problems.
You're going to have
conflict. What I'm saying is, they're doing an amazing job at it, but it's like those are also like trying to be good movies. Whereas I think Fast and Furious, enjoy
Fast and Furious is more of a soap opera, where you're like,
that's what I'm saying. It's a soap opera.
It's having fun with that continuity.
It's like wrestling more than it's like trying to be
a
a good movie.
Yeah, and it's very transparent that they're adding to the continuity every single movie.
Exactly, and there's thought being put into, how can we fit all this together? And that's why I enjoyed the Saw movies as well. They're not good movies, but the fact that they committed to the continuity so much that they're like, we're just going to keep adding this, it's soap opera like, and there's something super fun about that.
Yeah.
Comics get super crazy because you're right. With movies, you're only once a year, once every 2 years adding to this storyline. And that can get confusing because it draws out over such a long period of time. But for comics, when you do jump in at a good starting point and just fucking commit to it, there's nothing more rewarding as long as they stay good. But then when there is these moments where everything you just said, when you understand how that all fits and how that all means, that is bringing Letty back and Han, Jason Statham killing him and things like that, where it's just like, this is so stupid, but it makes sense.
Right.
And when that moment of making sense, you're like, fuck, this is awesome.
Well, the difference, right? What you were talking about, the story being the most important thing, right? Which is true. Obviously, we want great stories. The reason I love continuity and why like I love DC's continuity in the comic books, before all this, is the fact that you stay with these characters and these stories to see growth and to see change. And I like the idea of, I love the idea of Superman and Lois being together and when he revealed it being a big deal and them having a kid. I love the idea that, and this is one thing I don't agree with them doing, I loved it when Jason Todd was dead.
And stayed dead.
And Tim Drake was Robin and Nightwing was Nightwing. And I loved it when Bruce died, in quotes. Mm-hmm. And then Dick was like, I'll be Batman. And he goes out and he's Batman with Damian. Like, Batman and Robin, what a fucking amazing book that was, because it had been fucking 70 years of Bruce Wayne as Batman, and now they're like, you know what? No, we're committing to what would it be like if Dick Grayson was Batman. And you read that book, and that was great, and you knew Bruce would be back in some way, hook or crook.
But I guess that's the problem, right? Is like what's too much continuity, and this is I think becomes the issue for comics, is that at a certain point you almost. You get to a point where like I've seen all these stories happening before, right?
And that's when hopefully
with the
MCU it's going to end, and then the reboot, that's when it goes in time, whatever. Hopefully, once the 22 that you're talking about with Avengers 4, and from everything that they're talking about, it does sound like that's going to be the end of the story.
Feige even said today, the quote was like, he was like, "You're going to get something you've never seen in comic book movies for, a finale,"
which is great because that's where all this continuity is going to pay off in this story, and then it can move on and do something different. And that's why, for me, starting with the Ultimate Marvel universe, reading the comics, being able to be like, you don't need to know anything about any of the other
and
comics.
That's why Ultimate Spider-Man was amazing, because it was they kept the essence of who Peter Parker was, and you didn't need to know anything about it. They gave you the origin again,
modern takes on every character, and even if you had read the other ones, it was interesting because they were always slightly different and it was different. But my thing is, I've read every single Ultimate comic to ever come out until it ended, and I don't count the ones now that they've joined with the 616 universe. And I would say that if there's maybe 1,000 of them total, and it didn't get really bad until like the post-Ultimatum, and then it was just like, this is just not choreography, fucking continuity, because it is totally just like, hey, we're just rebooting it, and this Gwen Stacy is not the Gwen Stacy we knew. They're acting totally different. That's continuity not working.
Continuity.
I like that continuity.
Good continuity is when it honestly looks, everything that happens looks back on the things that have happened before and are like, how can this make sense? It's not losing it and pretending that things didn't happen.
Exactly.
Right, and that was the problem with Ultimate, because Spider-Man died in Ultimatum, and then they had like a requiem about him, and then all of a sudden he was back.
Which was fucking horrible.
Yeah, it made
they committed
no sense
to him dying.
Yeah.
And he was dead.
Yeah.
Miles Morales was Spider-Man, and it was fucking beautiful.
Oh, no. I'm saying they killed the Peter Parker of that universe in Ultimatum.
Yeah.
And then he came back and died again before Miles took over the mantle.
No.
Yes.
No.
I'm pretty sure on
That's
that
not
one.
what happened.
After let's Google it.
No, Ultimatum
We'll just keep
happened, and then it
believing
was
Gundam.
Death of Spider-Man. And then
What am I gonna Google?
Miles Morales was Spider-Man for a while, and then they had the
Yes.
Requiem where they brought him back.
Wait, the Ultimate
We're over it.
Ultimate Spider-Man came back from the dead too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? Miles
In
was
the-
perfect.
In the very fucking end of the Ultimate series. Brian Michael Bendis' goodbye gift to Marvel.
That's dumb.
Bringing him back. Yeah.
No, but the thing to your point, and to your point, is you're both right. Is that when does continuity get too much, right? Like it is a huge problem, and that's why comics reboot all the time, is because they're trying to encourage new readers to come in and do this. To your point, where you were, I forget what it was, but you were right. We kept talking over it.
Yeah.
But that's the struggle with comics and with continuity in general, is how do you make it appealing to jump in, and how do you make it not scary?
And it's easier when it has a smaller creative team behind it. Like WWE, if you just look at that company's continuity, yes, they have retconned the origin of Kane and The Undertaker 7 or 8 times, but it's only been a small group that has had final say over it, versus Marvel, where you have the X-Men office versus the Spider-Man office versus the Avengers office, and they're all making changes and taking out characters and stuff like that, that it doesn't matter how good your editorial team is, you're gonna see stuff slip through the cracks. And that's where continuity doesn't make sense, because it's like, oh, I thought this guy was on the East Coast, or I thought this guy was in space.
This is why for comics I've argued before that I'd like to see continuity blown up overall, but I don't mean you can't have continuity.
Right.
I mean there is no DC universe we're all worrying about. Every book's happening the same thing.
Right.
Landis has the Landis verse, and he has a 12-issue story he wants to tell, and he tells it.
And then will get his own verse. And stuff
but
like that.
it can be though that, oh man, hey Max, what you did there was really awesome or whatever. I'd love to tell a Batman storyline in that universe. Is that cool? Yeah, and you set that up, and the audience is smart enough.
Was for a long time.
Yeah.
Until it wasn't.
Well,
and that's the biggest problem. And when it first launched, it was Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and X-Men in the first couple of years.
Yep.
All of those comics, when you read them together, they all make sense. And when Spider-Man appears somewhere, it's like that makes sense time-wise with the Spider-Man universe. And that it was so rewarding. And then they added more, like the Ultimates came and this and that. It was like, okay, cool, this still works. And it was around the Ultimates Volume 3 where it's just like
it fell apart.
No one even knows what you're doing right now. Like this doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, and then they also started getting into the multiverse too, like where the 616 Spider-Man met the Ultimate Spider-Man.
Way late, yeah.
And it's like as soon as that stuff starts happening, continuity starts getting messed up.
It's so dumb.
Oh.
It upsets me. Stupid Galactus shit. Fuck out here.
Well,
ruined everything.
You mean he's a swarm? Sorry, I had to.
Well, how do you feel as not having anyone connected to the comics though about continuity? I mean, how do you view continuity when you think of continuity?
I mean, I view it in best case scenario Marvel, worst case scenario. Best case scenario Marvel, worst case scenario Lucas. Right? Like I love what they're doing with the current films, but it's a slave. They're a slave to those horrible prequels, and it sucks. And that is a. I mean, I know we can never change them, and every time I bring it up, Tim just rolls his eyes like, dude, it's not going to fucking happen. But I'm like, why are we such a slave to continuity that we can't go back? All we need to really know is that Anakin Skywalker is fucking Vader. And everything else, let's just fucking remake him, man. That's such a cool story that could have been told better. And we're never going to get that era of Star Wars ever again unless we tell another side story somewhere else in the fucking universe that was happening at that point. Which, I mean, I'm also weird about like the time periods in Star Wars because it's who the fuck knows when they're all supposed to happen anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I love continuity, and I mean, obviously, one of my favorite series of all time is Harry Potter, and you're talking about 7 books, thousands of pages, building off of each other. There's books in the books. That's how nerdy we fucking get in Harry Potter verse, where there's like Fantastic Beasts and where to find them, which then got made into its own movie, and people were like, where does the book of Fantastic Beasts? And like, no. It was a textbook that they read in the story, then she took that and she made it in real life, but it's really just it doesn't matter. But so I love all that because it's world building, and I love world building, and that's fantastic. But it does get, as you build something that big, it starts getting hard to manage.
Yeah.
And unless you have someone really, really, really watching over that, like a Kathleen Kennedy or a Kevin Feige, you're inevitably shit's just going to start falling out of your hands, and it's going to start being a mess.
Well, that was why they reset the Star Wars when it got acquired by Disney and everything like that, because they basically said there was too much out there, and we need to rein it in.
Sure.
And while I do agree that they won't reboot the prequel trilogy, I am also happy that they condensed down all the other stuff because there was just so much of it. And like I was always a Star Wars fan, and I read a few of the books, but I was never the guy who like could tell you exactly when and where Chewbacca died and who all Han and Leia's kids were and where they like it just got so convoluted that they had to rein that in.
Yeah, but we're almost getting there now. I mean, that's the thing is like with Star Wars canon, like a year or like 2 years ago, it was a nice, fresh, like, okay, cool, there's not too much.
But now all the comic books are canon too.
The comics are canon. They were so great. Started falling off a bit, getting a bit better now, but there's so many of them, plus the TV shows, plus the video games, plus the novels. It's like there's a lot of Star Wars shit out there that is canon, that has real effects on things happening. It's like, ugh, man.
See, I mean, and that's my big question, right? And it's an unanswerable question because it's all subjective. But how much does all of the extended stuff that's canon really matter to the mainstream people, like audiences, right?
To the mainstream,
we
doesn't. It's the hardcore
people, right? Yeah. But like we are probably a minority of people that are going to support things like the Star Wars TV show or CW Flash and Arrow and all those things. Which, by the way, I think is a good example of when, hey, it's on TV. It doesn't have to be involved with the rest of the universe.
Crossover Night 2.
I don't know.
It's recording.
Oh, I didn't record those. Shit. But see, that's a prime example of like, that's fun. Let's take it that far, right? Just the shows. That's cool. I don't need to see Grant Gustin like in the Marvel or the DCEU. Is that what they call it?
Yeah. It's annoying.
Their cinematic is, yeah.
It's
and
cool.
Once they
he's
reboot
it on TV.
then put him in it for sure when it's like happy and fun.
Although I think, I love Grant Gustin as Flash. It's his last name, right? I'm not saying it right. I always want to say Gustafson, but everyone's like, nope, those are too many syllables.
Adding a lot of letters.
Too many syllables, sir. So yeah, I mean, I love it. Obviously, I love it. I've loved Star Wars forever, but it sucks when it goes awry because there's no way to fix it, and that's I guess that point. Oh, I was on the mainstream point. Yeah, I don't think too many people. I don't think it matters as much as everyone thinks it matters, right? I don't think that so many people are going like, oh, the comics are for Star Wars. Like my wife, for instance, who likes Star Wars, but she's not going to give a fuck when Chewbacca died. It doesn't matter. She just wants to go and see that and ask me a bunch of questions during it and then not listen to the answers.
See, that's totally different. Like, that's the thing is, like, if you would ask her, like, hey, what are the main characters' names in episode 7? She wouldn't know any of them.
No, but probably neither with my mom or my brother or anyone that just goes and, okay, Star Wars is on demand.
Well, continuity doesn't mean anything.
It's like, oh, who's this shiny stormtrooper with a cape?
Like my brother's probably a perfect example, right? He knows Han Solo, he knows Luke, he knows the main characters, and so he's able to follow it. But I bet if you called him right now, like, do you give a shit where?
Do your Maz Kanata impression, Matt.
Oh yeah,
that's what I would call him.
He would get something probably completely inappropriate. We'd have to definitely cut that out of the show.
Yeah, you shouldn't call him during that right now.
So I don't know. I mean, it's the same thing as always. I want it all, and I want it all to be great. And when it's not great, I want to complain about it, and I want to tell everyone we shouldn't have continuity. But then when it's perfect, I want to be like, this is a perfect example. We should always do this.
Your YouTube comments.
I'm a YouTube commenter IRL.
I truly believe that if Marvel keeps trying to go after Avengers 4 without some dramatic just change, like, then that's when
they're going to get a lot of diminishing returns at a certain point.
They
all
also,
the fucking actors are getting old.
Yeah, they also have the ultimate Deus Ex Machina there with the Infinity Gauntlet, because the 6 stones are the ultimate power to reset anything and have it still make sense.
Right.
And that's where you'll keep the comic fans happy, but it'll make sense enough for them, and then for somebody like your wife who may know who Spider-Man is, she's not going to care when it changes to a different actor.
But then the question becomes this: why do we need that, right? If you keep 22 movies, at a certain point, the next generation is going to be like, Iron Man, what? I'm not watching that fucking movie. That's the equivalent of you guys watching a fucking movie from the 70s, right? You're like, this is, I don't know, why aren't they moving the camera? Where are the special effects?
Well, if this thing resets, though, then they don't really need to.
Yeah.
Sure, but at a certain point, couldn't you just also be like, hey guys, we're gonna just reset it.
Right, sure, but you know how Hollywood loves to walk away from
Yeah,
money.
that's true. I imagine that's what they're going to do, though.
Yeah.
Like, I can see worlds where after Avengers 4, they do reset the universe and, like, whatever, but then that's it. When they go forward, it's not referencing the other stuff.
Yeah, you're not seeing
That's
Robert.
what I'm saying.
Jr.'s not in pictures.
After
and
a
shit.
certain point, like, you figure this goes on for 2 more decades, which it's going to, right? Are people going to give a shit about any of those movies that were made in the 90s and early 2000s?
No, but it's no different than a 13-year-old right now isn't going to go watch 89 Batman. I mean, if they're
sure, but that's not continuity, right?
Well, but that's what I'm saying though, is in their mind the continuity doesn't matter, whereas I'm just a comic book fan and I've loved Batman.
Sure.
So I'll watch every iteration of Batman. Yeah. So I think I think it comes down to almost in the same way we were talking about people with tech. It's the people that do care and the people that don't care.
Yeah.
And I would say we definitely lean towards the former on that one.
Bring me up to speed. I can never remember. So it's Infinity War. That's Avengers 3.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
When is Avengers 4 coming?
A year later or a year and a half later?
Are they shooting them at the same time kind of crap?
That was the plan, yeah.
But they're not calling it Infinity War Part 2.
No.
Now
it's untitled. Avengers 4 is working title.
It's Avengers 4.
I hear they were going to call it The Wrath of Khan, but apparently that was taken.
And I have a feeling that there's probably going to be spoilers in the title. That's why they aren't saying anything.
Yeah,
sure.
Because
I think they have said that.
We got
somebody did
Black
hint
Friday, or not, sorry, Black Panther.
Right.
Yes.
In February, then Avengers.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then
Ant-Man and the Wasp.
And Captain Marvel.
And then and then Avengers 4.
Yeah. Is that it? Wow.
Those are the ones that have been formally announced as far as I can remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would bring it to 22. And then there's the end of the universe.
And the second Spider-Man. But they
They
haven't said when
and
that time.
Guardians Volume 3.
Yes, but
which they said is after, which
that's where I don't know where they fall. But they can just change it anytime anyway, and we don't have a choice.
True. That's a lot.
Thanks for watching the GameOverGreggy Show, everybody. Click up here to subscribe. Click down here to go to Patreon. Click over to here to see a video where I don't have a horse voice. And click down here to see a horse.